I want to give all the praise, all the glory, all the honor unto Yahawah, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah, Kodash. Double honors goes out to the elder apostles of Great Millstone for teaching me the truth. Also, want to acknowledge Alakiam for pushing the truth with sincerity throughout the four corners of the earth, and Shalom to the elect of the nation of Israel. This is Shabai from the GMS Denver camp, and actually going to go in on some chariots. The video that's on the screen right now is from last night. I was driving and I just happened to see this, what I believe are chariots. See the bottom of the screen, how it's crossing over. Then you have a line of chariots right there in the sky. So, hey, I had to pull over. I was driving. I pulled over and recorded this. But, you know, the Most High Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, you know, He's got our back. He's got these angels out here watching over us. I'm going to actually play the video and then bring out some precepts. And the camera's kind of messed up at first, the way I was filming. I was too close. Look at that.
Shalom, Akim. Yahweh Bashem Yahushua
The one on the bottom just casually floating across. The one on the top disappears. And when I stopped recording, they were there for a little bit longer, and then they eventually all disappeared. But these are the chariots, man. Chariots of the Most High. Chariots of Yahawah, the chariots of Israel. I'll start out with Psalm 34:7. It says, "The angel of Yahawah encampeth round about them that fear him, and delivereth them." Because those chariots, what the world ignorantly calls UFOs, they are an instrument of destruction and an instrument of salvation. Okay? Because you're going to have those angels, those what you call UFOs. The angels are the ones who are basically manning those spaceships, right? But the majority of the world, you know, they see things like that, and they think it's green men, alien green men, you know, or guys with big heads, you know, those aliens with the big head that looks like a fetus when you look into the similarities between the appearance of a fetus and a so-called alien. That's not what's in those chariots. Those are the angels of Yahawah that are in the chariots, and they're spiritual vehicles. Okay, and this is, like I said, it's going to be a instrument of salvation and an instrument of destruction when the Most High, you know, unleashes the angels, the heavenly host, once the elect is sealed. Let me see if I can get a little bit on that. Revelation 7:1, it says, "After these things I saw four angels standing on the four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree." And wind is going into the destruction. Okay? It says, "And I saw another angel ascending from the east, and having the seal of the living power. And he cried with a loud voice to the four angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, Hurt not the earth, neither the sea nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of the Most High in their foreheads. So this is where we tell you that the Most High, He's not going to destroy this place until the elect is sealed, okay? And the elect being sealed is it's done every single day, okay? You have men of Israel, the 104 you have the 144,000, you know. You start out with the prophets, but you have the men of Yahawah B'Shem Yahushai who are teaching the scriptures on the street corners, teaching them on YouTube, you know. And every day, you know, the elect are being sealed, okay? So once these once the elect is sealed, like we just read, you know, the wind is going to blow on the earth, or the destruction, okay? It's going to be destruction via nuclear missiles. You're going to have the angels shooting fire from the chariot, you know. And not only are those angels set up to destroy and assist with the destruction along with the missiles, but also give salvation to the elect, okay? Let me see here. But the chariots, man, I showed you that video. Let's go back and look at it again real quick. And the thing is well, let me play the video again. Look at that. Like I said, the camera skills weren't the best at this point, but once I zoomed out, you could see him better. This was last night.
Shalom,
look at the chariot on the bottom.
Yahawah B'Shem Yahushua Barakatah.
Hey, call halal Yahawah B'Shem Yahushai. You know, and it's crazy because, you know, there were people out there, and I didn't see nobody really noticing these chariots or saying anything except me, you know. Everything's spiritual, but these people see these type of things, they become, you know, fearful. But the Lord's servants, look at the one
Shalom,
on the bottom.
Akim.
See the one on the bottom, just floating.
Yahawah B'Shem Yahushua Barakatah.
And this was just last night, man. I had to get out the car, you know, and record this. And, you know, like I say, Yahawah B'Shem Yahushai are going to, you know, well, Yahweh's going to unleash Yahawah Shai and the angels, man. And Babylon is going to be destroyed. Let's go ahead and close that. Let me get Isaiah 66 and 15. It says, "For behold, Yahawah will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire. For by fire and by his sword will Yahawah plead with all flesh." And plead means judge. So everybody's going to get judged, you know, according to their actions, according to their works, you know. If, you know, you're an Israelite, you've been out there preaching false doctrine, you've been out there, you know, you got a lot of camps right now teaching all kinds of bullshit that's not according to the scripture. That how the judgment of Yahawah, it starts with the house of Israel, okay? But let me read 16. For by fire and by his sword will Yahawah plead with all flesh, and the slain of Yahawah shall be many. Okay. It says, they that sanctify themselves and purify themselves in the gardens behind one tree in the midst, eating swine's flesh, and the abomination and the mouse shall be consumed together, saith Yahawah. And consumed, when you go into that word, it's dealing with being consumed by fire. So, like I say, the missiles, the chariots, instruments of destructions. Okay? And, you know, I was actually on a delivery when I recorded those chariots last night, and I was, I have this customer. He's a kind of a regular, and I was all hyped up in the spirit just because I was, you saw what I just showed you, so I was hyped up. I was like, happy about getting those chariots on my camera, and also just seeing them. It's always it hypes up the spirit of the elect. But on the contrast, it's like fearful for these heathen, these people who are not in this ministry and not in this truth. When they see those chariots, they freak out. They're scared, and all you got to do is pull up, YouTube videos or whatever social media videos of people witnessing and recording what they call UFOs. They're always freaking out, right? They're like, oh my God, what is it? What is, people freaking out when they see at the side of those chariots. Oops, let me went to the wrong one. Jeremiah 10:1, it says, hear ye the word which Yahawah speaketh unto you. This is Jeremiah 10:1. O house of Israel, thus saith Yahawah, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. All right, you go into that dismayed, it goes into fearful, right? So the point is when I delivered it to the regular customer, right? And like I say, he's a regular, so I was at I chose to share the video with him that I had just recorded because it was fresh. It was literally, I had recorded it like minutes before I delivered his items, and the first thing he said was like, "Oh man, that's scary." He's all, that kind of freaks me out. That's kind of scary, right? That's what that word dismayed means. It means they're well, let me read the word. It says the AI overview of dismayed. It says, "I am dismayed" means you feel a feeling of shock, distress, or disappointment, especially due to something unexpected. Distress and anxiety. These chariots, when people see them, especially if they see them up close and personal, they get stressed out. But the elect, this is a faith booster for the elect. Okay. I think it's 2 Kings. Let me see. Yeah, 2 Kings 2, and let's see. So if you're familiar with this story, well, let's read a little bit of it. Dealing with the chariot, Elijah. But Elisha watched Elijah go up in a chariot. Okay, so let me read it. Well, start at 5, because Elijah knew the Lord was gonna take him up in a chariot. Like they call abduction by UFO. In the spirit, Elijah knew that Yahweh was going to take him, right? And he was telling Elisha, his understudy, his protege, if you will, that he's like, "Yo, man, I'm going. The Lord Yahweh is taking me in a chariot," and basically telling Elisha, like, "You're going to be the man." He was the understudy. He learned under Elijah, the prophet. So let's read it. This is what's taking place right here in verse 5. It says, "And the sons of the prophets that were at Jericho came to Elisha and said unto him, Knowest thou that Yahweh will take away thy master from thy head today? And he answered, Yeah, I know it. Hold your peace." Right? Elisha didn't want to see Elijah go, but he knew that it was the will of Yahweh. It said, and remember, our Lord Yahweh Shai, he also went up in a chariot when a cloud received him. You could read about that in Acts chapter 1, the first chapter. Starts out around verse 9. But let's see, it says, And Elijah said unto him, Tarry, I pray thee here, for Yahweh hath sent me to Jordan. And he said, As Yahweh liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. And the two went on. And 50 men of the sons of the prophets went and stood a view afar off, and they too stood by the Jordan, the river. Okay, so the prophets, we know what these vehicles in the heavens are. We know that those are the chariots. It's the heathen and the 2/3. They bug out when they see these heavenly vehicles, which they portray them, or they perceive them to be alien green men. They call them UFOs, or what's the new term? I haven't used it in a while, because I guess it's not a new term anymore, but is it IHP or UHP? I can't remember. It's an acronym for something, but I can't remember. But anyway, verse 8, it says, And Elijah took his mantle and wrapped it together and smote the waters, and they were divided hither and thither, so that they two went over the dry ground. And it came to pass, when they were gone over, that Elijah said to Elisha, Ask what I shall do for thee before I be taken away from thee. And how was he going to be taken away? He was going to be taken away by a chariot, or a so-called UFO. And Elisha said, I pray thee, see, phone chimed on that, I pray thee, let a double portion of thy spirit be upon me. So Elisha was like, because Elijah said, well, ask something. He was basically like asking him for a blessing, right? Telling him, I'll give you a blessing before I leave, right? And Elisha's like, give me a double portion of your spirit to be upon me, right? And Elijah had a strong spirit, man. It says in verse 10, And he said, Thou hast asked a hard thing. Nevertheless, if thou see me when I am taken from thee, it shall be so unto thee. But if not, it shall not be so. Okay? So Elijah was like, yo, if you see me go up in the chariot, guess what? It's going to boost your spirit. You're going to get that double portion of my spirit. And that's a huge blessing, because you got to think about how powerful Elijah was, So Elisha, for him to have a double portion of that spirit of Elijah, man, that's off the charts, right? And this is how it is for the elect. When we see the chariots, it boosts our spirits. It lifts our spirits up every time, man. You see brothers at the camps, they'll get the chariots on the videos, and you can hear the excitement in the men of Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai's voices. Kahala Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai. Everybody gets hyped up. Everybody's, happy when the chariots are upon us, right? And so it was no difference in the 2 Kings 2, Elisha, well, let's read it. 2 Kings 2:11. And it came to pass, as they still went on and talked, that behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, and parted them both asunder. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. And that's another word for the chariot, is the whirlwind, right? We read it in Isaiah 66. And it says, and Elisha saw it, and he cried, my father, the chariot of Israel, and the horsemen thereof. And he saw him no more, and he took hold of his own clothes and rent them in two pieces. Okay? So, Elisha saw Elijah go up in that chariot. And, the first thing he said, man, behold, there appeared a chariot of fire, chariot of Israel, right? Because those chariots, those what you call UFOs, those are the chariots of Israel, man. And they're going to, like I say, they're going to be an instrument of destruction and an instrument of salvation. When people see those things in the sky, they think it's a strange thing, right? So like I talked about the destruction that they're bringing, and let's read about the salvation they're going to give to the elect. All right, you can read about that in the Wisdom of Solomon 5. It says, then shall the righteous man stand in great boldness before the face of such as afflicted him, and made no account of his labors. Okay, talking about the elect man, right? Spiritual man, the man of Yahawah B'Shem Yahushai. It says, because they don't make an account of our labors, right? Even when we do the videos, and you got scoffers and mockers that are going to watch this video, and they're going to be like, oh, those are drones, that's a satellite, you always have Esau the heathen, the 2/3, they always got some shit to say, but that's okay, because we know what it is. Verse 2, it says, when they see it, they shall be troubled with terrible fear, and shall be amazed at the strangeness of his salvation, so far beyond all that they look for. Okay, because when they see the men of Yahawah B'Shem Yahushai going up in those heavenly vehicles, in those chariots, it's going to be first off, they're going to be fearful, right? Like I told you, dismayed at the signs in heaven, which those chariots are signs, and they're an omen. You see the chariots more frequently. Everybody has a camera in their hand, a phone. They're being recorded all the time, daily, And these heathen, these 2/3, they're afraid, they get dismayed, they have terrible fear. But the men of Yahawah B'Shem Yahushai, we get excited to see those chariots. Like I jumped out of my car and I started filming, right? I started recording them. And it was a spirit. It lifted up my spirit last night when I saw those chariots. It says, and shall be amazed at the strangeness of his salvation, so far beyond all that they look for. Because when the men of Yahawah B'Shem Yahushai, when we go up in those chariots during the destruction of Babylon, America, when the missiles are fired in this direction, that's when the Most High Yahweh, he's going to send his angels to gather his elect, like it tells you in Matthew 24. Let's read that, and I'll close out, because I got to go take my seed to her to her indoctrination. Got to take them. Your kids get indoctrinated by this Babylonian society when you take them to school, so-called school. So Matthew 24:30, it says, and it says, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels, I just showed you a video of the angels, with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. So those angels, like I said, an instrument of destruction for the 2/3 and the wicked and the heathen, and then the elect are going to be gathered. And this is actually what salvation is. When the destruction comes, when the nuclear war breaks out, when the angels are putting in work on the earth, especially, namely Babylon, America. The elect are going to go up in those heavenly vehicles. They're going to be abducted, if you will. They're going to be that's what salvation is. It's the strangeness of our salvation, and that's why they're going to be like, man, that's a strange thing to them. The heathen, like the guy that regular that I customer that I delivered to, he was like, man, that's kind of scary. That's freaking me out, man. He's all, that was just out here just now. I showed him the video. Said, yeah, man, like minutes ago I recorded this video. These people, they're not ready for what's about to happen. Okay, let me read one more verse. This is Isaiah 47:3. It says, thy nakedness shall be uncovered, yeah, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man. This is talking about Yahawah, right? Because our people, just like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, they talk about being naked, and what that means, it's a metaphor that they were without the laws. They were acting, they sinned. They were sinning. Whenever you sin as an Israelite, it's a shame, and it's almost like you're naked, right? Like if you ran outside naked, you would be ashamed, right? It says, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man, because our Lord Yahawah, he's coming back in that heavenly, celestial body, that spiritual body, which is eternal, along with these angels, right? The angels, you can't kill an angel. You saw Edom, the so-called white man, the heathen nations, they're going to start shooting missiles. They're going to start using their weapons on the angels, and it's not going to do nothing to the angels. They have nothing for the heavenly host, right? And host means an army. So it says, Isaiah 47:4, as for our Redeemer, Yahawah of hosts is his name, and the Holy One of Israel. Right, Yahawah of hosts. Again, that word host goes into army. So that's the heavenly host, the heavenly army, which those chariots, they're gonna. You're not gonna be able to do anything as far as militarily against these heavenly hosts. I'm gonna play the video again. There it is. Look at this is part of the Lord's heavenly host, man. Zoom out here. There it is. See that? Look at the one on the bottom.
Shalom, Akim. Yahawah Bashem Yosha Brakta.
Look at that. See the one just floating on the bottom. And I didn't even see that one until I watched the video. I mean, I saw it, but I didn't know that I, caught it the way I did. Look, see, it's just floating. Hey. So with that, I'm going to give all the praise, all the glory, all the honor unto Yahawah, Bahashem, Yahawah, Bahashem, Rakah, Kadash. Shalom.